Hey everybody, Rich here. We had some audio difficulties, mostly of the internet variety on this week's episode, and by the time we caught them, we were already recording the next week's episode. So we did our best. Thank you for staying with us. Hopefully it's not too bad. We were able to edit around it. Big shout outs to Ryan for doing that. Again, thank you for listening, and here's the music.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Nick Cage Fight Podcast, where we're getting really into Decotora lately. I don't know why, but I am compelled to trick out a truck. I don't even own a truck. I barely own a vehicle, but I don't know. I'm into it. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, and I'm joined as always by Rich and Ryan. How are we feeling?
Listen, if you want a truck, I'll get you a truck.
Like an 18-wheeler?
No, like a 1994 Ford Ranger for like $400.
You can still trick that out, right? I mean,
you can still trick that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It won't be as dope. I personally am getting heavily into Decochari, which is decorative bicycles, because I don't drive.
Ooh, that sounds really cool too. Now I gotta look up all these deco subcultures because I think it's cool. I just think it's neat.
A lot of them are responses to a Japanese, basically like Smokey and the Bandit series called Truck Yaro, starring Bunta Sugawara. They roll.
Huh.
Now I know that.
Before we dive back into the Ghostlands, I did want to bring up a little weird piece of local news. I don't know if you guys caught this, but it cracked me up so bad. I have to get it off my chest. So please bear with me. Apparently, hundreds of pounds of pasta
were dumped
in the New Jersey woods. Police are investigating. That is an actual headline.
I did see this and thought immediately I would have eaten that pasta.
I will admit the funniest things to me were people's reactions to it. Somebody suggested sending the perpetrators to the state penitentiary. You know?
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I have to agree. But yeah, no, keep doing weird shit, people in New Jersey, because that's fucking funny. Apparently, somebody brought it up because there's somebody who like failed in their bid for a local public office, whose one of their primary pet concerns was
keeping the pasta out of the Pine Barrens.
No, it was like waste services in the town. Like apparently they don't have a very reliable waste disposal service.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, the pasta is going to ruin the pH level of this creek, and that feeds the town water supply. It's so fucking weird. I had to mention it because it's funny and bizarre.
That is bizarre and funny. I agree.
But we are not here to review Mission Impossible. We are here to wrap up our review of Prisoners of the Ghostland.
Something that is also bizarre and funny.
It is bizarre and funny.
Yeah.
While you guys were gone, I pulled up and listened to the grandfather clock song again. That thing is stuck in my fucking head. So when we last left our intrepid hero, he had just had one of his nuts blown off. Classic point in the hero's journey, where you suffer a crushing defeat in the form of one of your testicles being blown off by a suit bomb.
Happens to me at least once a month.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on my hero's journey.
A good thing they grow back, right?
Do they though?
I don't know. I've never had one damaged, so I cannot confirm or deny their regenerative abilities. But yeah, so this devastating wound causes Hero to pass out, and we go back to the dream sequence where he's walking through town where everybody's wearing a mask. But this time, his bank robbing buddy Psycho is walking along with him. Again, Gumball Kid shows up and runs into a building. It's the bank building. Pistol. Psycho has two pistols, and Nick Cage has his sawed-off shotgun. And we actually get to see the robbery scene in total when Cage is forcing the tellers to put money into bags. The Gumball Kid offers a gumball to Psycho, and Psycho goes to shoot the Gumball Kid. Cage sees this and tries to tackle Psycho, throwing off his gun goes off, but just hits the gumball machine, which explodes. Very colorful. There is a brief fight between Psycho and Hero. Psycho shoots 2 cops, a teller, several bank patrons, and finally the gumball kid. Cage rises at this point, and he and Psycho continue their fight. They go crashing through the glass front door of the bank, and cops swarm them both. Psycho starts firing at the cops. The cops start shooting back. Cage takes this opportunity to flee, but the cops are still shooting at him, and a young girl gets shot in the thigh, and her mother gets shot and dies. So, given that, we just saw that Bernice has a very particular scar on her thigh, this is her. She's the kid from this particular scene. Psycho ends up getting restrained by the cops and arrested, and the governor walks up to the little girl shot in the leg and puts his hand on her head. So we now have the backstory for Bernice, and then we cut back to the present, potentially, because this gets a little bit messy, right? So Bernice is crying. We cut back to the little girl with the governor, and then finally back to Nick Cage, who walks up to her, sans one testicule, and realizing who she is now, apologizes to her because essentially he kicked off the chain of events that resulted in her mother dying and her being in the clutches of the governor. At this point, the scarred man and the truck and the samurai people show up, only now they also have these crawling, zombie growling individuals dressed in like prisoners' jumpsuits. They show up and swarm Hero and Bernice. During this, one of Cage's arm bombs goes off, mangling him, but also knocking some of the prisoners away. And then the scarred man and his cohort seem to vanish into the swirling dust from the desert landscape. So, like I said, the timeline here is a little bit messy. So I'm describing these things in order, and if it seems a little disjointed, that's because of how it plays out in the film. Cage and Bernice appear to go back to the Ghostland town with the clock. The townsfolk are telling a history story. The town used to be near a nuclear power plant, and when trying to transport nuclear waste, the truck collided with a prisoner transport, setting off a nuclear explosion of some sort and poisoning the land. Cage asks why no one helped, and it sounds like the owners of the plant denied their involvement, and that's why no one helped. The town proclaims Cage to be a hero because he found Bernice, the innocent soul, and gave her another chance. Now, at this point, we cut back to the crashed car with Nick Cage still passed out and Bernice still on the cart that she was on when they originally got to the vehicle. So it's tough to piece together which one is a dream and which one is not, or if they're both dreams or what's going on, because we got some critical information from both of those sequences about the larger story that's occurring.
Yeah, I think the history lesson was a flashback, maybe. It's very hard to pin down, but I don't think it really matters all that much, honestly.
It doesn't in the grand scheme of things, but it is a little bit disjointed. So just pointing it out because they're still back at the vehicle. The arm bomb portion does appear to have happened because that arm bomb did go off when the prisoners were swarming him, and that damage is still definitely on Hero as the movie continues.
Right.
So Hero is unconscious, but the suit is prompting Bernice to say her name again. She struggles, but is finally able to yell out that her name is Bernice, and this works, winding down the imminent explosions and adding 2 days to the timer. And then she tries to wake Nick Cage.
Little detail I really appreciate is that the voice coming from the suit is just the governor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that too, and I couldn't tell if it was like live or not at points.
No, I think it was just something that he recorded. He spent like a couple hours before getting Nick Cage out of jail, just being like, "Say your name, Bernice."
Yeah, because like every time it happens, it's like, "Come on, Bernice, say your name."
Yeah, Rich, I was with you on that one, is where I couldn't tell if it was a fucking direct feed or not.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense with the governor's explanation. It makes more sense that it would have been, a recording of some sort.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a recording, but there were points where I'm just like, wait, is he piped in?
yeah, yeah. So we do cut back to Samurai Town at this point, and there's a bit of a party going on. Everybody is drinking extensively, and a number of the women, dressed as geishas or whatever, are sort of extolling the governor about his greatness. He's sort of sitting surrounded by them, drinking sake. And then he tries to get Susie to come over and sit on his lap, but she refuses. Then this is so weird. The governor demands that someone bring him America.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand what that was supposed to be. I really don't get it.
I think it might be the name of one of his huers.
I
That's the only logical explanation of it. Or a gun. Bring me a gun.
I don't get it, because then he calls over Yasujiro, who he hands a brown paper bag and instructs him to, quote, make it rain. And the bag is just filled with paper money, and he just starts throwing it at the geisha women who are praising him.
It's American currency, though, isn't it?
Yes,
it looks like it.
Yeah.
It absolutely looks like it.
Which is peculiar. This movie was shot in Japan.
I think that we are to believe in this post-apocalyptic world that neither America or Japan exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's a safe assumption, but Japan's still an island.
There is also, by the way, I don't know if you caught it. There's supposedly, because I got this in the research trying to figure out what the fuck I had just watched. There's apparently posters in town that say either "Make this town great again" or "Make this country."
I saw
great
those.
Again.
Yes, make this country great again. There's also a fucking wanted poster for Lupin the Third floating around somewhere.
I did notice that one. I think it's on the sheriff's desk in the beginning.
I think
because
so.
I actually, what was it? I actually think it's the name of the swordsman character from Lupin.
Goemon Ishikawa.
I think that was the one I saw.
Okay, there's definitely one that just says wanted Lupin Arsène number 3.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I have to go back and check if it's the Goemon, the one from Lupin.
Yeah.
Because that would be neat.
I mean, Goemon is also the name of a like historical, like mythological Japanese thief.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that it might be that, but the fact that they had the fucking Lupin poster makes me think it might just be my boy Goemon.
Yeah. I watched I can't remember what the name of it is, because I was never, confession, I was never super into to Lupin, but the one movie where like the basic premise of it is Goemon fighting.
Oh, the lumberjack?
That's insane American dude with 2 gigantic fucking hatchets.
No, he's Canadian. He's a lumberjack.
Oh, he's Canadian?
He's Canadian, yeah. That's the blood spray of Goemon Ishikawa, one of my favorite Lupin movies. It rules.
So, nice. Some of the most brutal fight animation I've ever
it fucking
seen.
cuts that dude's face right off. You still see his teeth coming out of the scar. It's awesome.
Well, he gets like half of his arm shaved off, like some deli meat. Good. Anyway.
It's really good. That movie gets a resounding watch it from me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So anyway, back in Prisoners of Ghostland, Yoshijiro is making it rain, and Susie's still acting a little bit wild, and the governor sort of has a freak out on her, telling her, demanding of her to keep time, and that she'll act as his clock until Bernice returns, forcing her to shout tick tock. This, I mean, again, a lot of the themes in this film come back to time in general as a concept, but it also makes me think, with all of this singing and the rhythmic clapping and stuff like that, and the stopped time in the Ghostlands, although there's a different reason for that we'll get into, that the passing of time is not something that the people that inhabit this world have a way of tracking anymore. That's just the sense I get from how much of what they're talking about is based on rhythm and timekeeping devices. But nobody has a fucking watch. The closest thing we have to a timekeeping device is the fucking bomb suit.
Yeah.
And that's just literally just little numbered dials for the days, not minutes or hours or anything. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, is probably a significant conscious choice that they made. So the Cowboys have caught one of the other girls that ran off with Bernice, not blue hair, the other one. And they've brought her restrained in front of the governor. The governor questions her, basically saying, like, you did this, right? You talked Bernice into running away, so on and so forth. And in response, she goes, listen to these ads for goods and services, which I thought was interesting.
It's crazy how they knew that like 2 years later there would be three guys doing a podcast about this movie, because the whole, listen to these ads and services came out of left field.
It is wild how often that pops up in movies that we're watching at the exact moment that we need it for the podcast.
Yeah, we really have
Nick
to
Cage
stop
is a
watching
bro.
the versions that are adapted for TV, broadcast television.
Yeah.
I did watch this one on TBS.
So, no, what the woman actually tells the governor is that it was Bernice's idea to run away in the first place. And the governor orders Yasujiro to execute the woman. He gives her a rose. And then everybody in the town who's watching starts shouting "tick-tock" until the blade falls. Now we cut back to Ghostland. And the townsfolk are discussing what might have happened to Cage and Bernice. There is some debate as to whether or not they're definitely dead or if they escaped. General consensus seems to be that nobody escapes, but Bernice shows back up and says he's dead, talking about Hero, I'm assuming. And Enoch exclaims that no one escapes the Ghostlands, but Cage comes stumbling into town. The townsfolk asked what he saw, and he says he saw ruins and all the people suffering and all the people he harmed. But they came to him and helped him. And he says they helped him because he's radioactive. And at this point, there's this weird scene that they repeat a couple times when he's having these sort of visions, and it's a bunch of kids around this like square skylight, like looking down. And so he sees this again, and the kids are telling him that he has a duty to complete and that they will give him another life. Very odd. But we're cutting back to the governor's town, and there's a sort of drunken swordsman stumbling down the street, calling out for Yasujiro. It looks like one of the women in the window of, again, the what I can only assume is a brothel of some sort.
Yes, that architecture implies that it's a brothel. It's
Yeah,
basically
it's
like the
red light
storefront.
district
Yeah,
thing,
it's
right?
like the storefront where you pick your geisha.
Yeah. And we learn that Yasujiro's sister is one of the women in the window. Yasujiro heeds the call out, comes out, and just slices these boys up. All of the, I know I haven't dwelt on it too much in this because he only had the one big sword fight scene up until now. The sword fight choreography in this is pretty fucking cool.
It is very solid.
There's actually an amazing scene at the end of this fight scene because again, he cuts a bunch of dude just to ribbons. But at the very end, there's one guy who has been slashed pretty badly, but he has his head smashed through a large paper lantern, and Yasujiro gives him a final stab in the neck region, and there's just
this is
the
pretty rad.
most practical blood effects spraying, but inside a paper lantern. It's cool.
Do love how consistent the practical effects are in this. Like,
I agree 100%.
There's not a lot of CG bullshit. When Nick Cage has his ball fucking blown off, he is holding up a little rubber fake blood covered testicule.
So great sword fight scene. If you like sword fight scenes, you will like this film. Yasujiro's sister tells him that the governor is lying to him, that he'll free her if Yasujiro works for him, and she implores him to leave his service. However, it's morning in the Ghostland, and the men are still keeping the clock from moving. Some kids are playing instruments and singing, and Cage is just sort of stalking around. Bernice is talking to a group of children, and after the kids bring him a drink, I did think this was funny too. I don't know a lot of Japanese terms, but I do know thank you, and Cage or Hero's character apparently also knows this. And he also knows the word for delicious, which is oishi, if I'm not mistaken.
That is one of the words for tasty.
Okay.
Umai is also delicious.
Well, in this scene, he uses oishi.
Oishi, yeah.
Yeah. So a little bit of Japanese from Cage. And then it's time for him to give a speech, a rousing speech to the Ghostlanders.
Oh, can I just play it? Can I just play it? Because it's
Oh,
great.
you better. It's
Yeah.
real good.
Absolutely. Let's hear it. This
I'll
is
have
one of the
a bit of that.
great bits.
Now hear this, Ghostlanders. Tomorrow, getting out of here. Impossible. It's impossible. Impossible? Ha! If you had told me 3 days ago I'd be standing here with one arm and one testicle, trying to reason with you, bitches, I would have said impossible too. But I'm telling you, there's a way. There is no way.
Yes, there is.
Okay, that's that. I just really
Yeah.
wanted to hear him scream testicle.
Testicle! It's very good. I loved it.
Testicle!
Yeah, no, that was beautiful.
It's beautiful, man.
Trying to reason with you, bitches.
And my favorite part is as he's walking up, there's like a woman who like she's an extra, but I don't think the directing was very good for her because she's kind of standing there. And then as he's walking up, she like does this weird aggressive growling stance to him. And then when he passes, she just goes back to kind of just like standing there moping.
No, that's normal. I do that to people all the time.
Yeah.
You got to mad dog him.
Yeah. So after his rousing speech, Cage goes to talk to Ratman. And he asks Ratman if they can get all of his totally dope trucks up and running and get everyone out of the Ghostlands. So Ratman and his rat gang go to work. And one of them finds an old like football helmet and gives it to Cage, which Cage gives the alas poor Yorick Shakespeare line, which is funny, but I really don't know why they included it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what the point of that was, other than maybe Cage himself found it funny, you know?
Yeah, maybe.
I would buy that.
I mean, there's also the part where Enoch is just reading Wuthering Heights to a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Like it's a Bible.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Because he's giving sermons, but is each one just Wuthering Heights?
Each one is just Wuthering Heights because he keeps talking about Heathcliff and Catley.
Oh, that's funny. So yeah, the Rat Gang is fixing cars. Enoch is preaching or reading Wuthering Heights to people, and Cage is bolting metal plating onto his bomb fucked up arm and giving some practice karate chops. Now I want to ask you guys about this because in that scene, it looks to me like he's making a metal splint, but later when we get a better glimpse at it, it looks like he is like Evil Dead, like just
I was gonna
this
say
into his flesh and bones.
I did in fact say groovy as he tightened that into his arm because it did have some heavy Army of Darkness vibes to me.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
Groovy.
so yeah, he mangles the fuck out of his arm, but turns it into a weapon. So call it a wash. The next day, the crew gets ready to leave the Ghostlands. Cage has his helmet on very briefly, but it's on at a very crucial moment where everybody's walking, you know, the cool walking scene where the camera's in front of him. And then he takes it off like right after they get 5 steps away because they are immediately confronted by the bandits with the heavily scarred man right up front. And he reveals that he's Psycho, Cage's old bank robbing buddy. So this is where we get the whole full circle. The story of what happened, the explosion that destroyed the Ghostlands and poisoned, you know, the surrounding area. Psycho was on the prisoner convoy and likely had something to do with it crashing into the truck transporting nuclear waste. If you ignore science, that's how you end up with a nuclear explosion in the area. And so, yeah, Psycho says, you know, he burned in hell and asks Cage if he's ever burned in hell. And Cage tells Psycho how, the ghosts of the people they hurt came to him for help, and he wants to help them. And can you let us go? And Psycho basically says yes, but explains that the real predator is the governor, and he wants Cage and Bernice to go and finish this and stop the governor. Psycho gives them permission to pass from the Ghostlands, and we see another nuclear explosion, or the previous
I think
one.
it's the original. I think once time starts again, the explosion finishes, is the vibe I got. Because the clock starts at the exact moment that the explosion shows up behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because well, I mean, like, how it plays out in the visuals of the scene is like Psycho raises his arms in front of the truck, and just the mushroom cloud goes up behind him.
Yeah.
And then we cut to the hero Bernice and the Ghostlanders are like got bright light shining on them, right? So make of that what you will. Back in Samurai Town, Cage and Bernice walk up right after the governor gives an unhinged speech about himself. I didn't write down the explicit language, but it's like for me, forests will burn themselves down to the ground. For me, this will happen. For me, that'll happen. And I think he ends it with "Long live the animal farm."
Yes, he does.
Yeah,
he
does.
starts talking about the animal farm.
Yeah. So Cage and Bernice saunter up after this speech, and then are surrounded by swordsmen and cowboys. The governor comes up and hugs Bernice. Cage asks for the key to his suit. The governor declines, and by declines, he says something like, "I wouldn't give you an ounce of my piss, you degenerate."
Yes.
So Hero grabs Bernice, holds a knife to her throat, and demands the key. Poor Susie, fucking loses it and jumps on a mounted minigun that was just set up by the street for whatever reason, and just mows down a ton of cowboys, swordsmen, bystanders, until one of the cowboys shoots Susie a few times, though not mortally. Cage is still surrounded. The governor is frantically calling for Yasujiro, and Bernice gets shot by one of the cowboys, but again, not a particularly bad wound. And the fight is on, and Cage goes on a fucking murder spree. It's pretty cool. There's some good gunfighting in this scene. Not necessarily like John Wick gunfighting, but still pretty solid. I liked it.
Yeah, no major complaints after having to watch Jiu-Jitsu last week.
Yeah.
Agreed.
The fight scenes in this film were good. They were good fight scenes.
There were not enough paper hats in this movie, though.
That's correct. But
there was a lack of paper hats, but there was plenty of other weird shit.
Like Tock Sakaguchi. I'm assuming that he probably did some of the choreography for this, which would explain why all of his sword fighting was dope.
Yeah. Like I said, the fight scenes were really good. Meanwhile, Bernice is trying to get Susie to safety on another hand-drawn cart. She unfortunately gets to the end of a street, and there's just a bunch of swordsmen. So she runs back the other way and runs smack dab into Yasujiro. Yasujiro ignores her and starts going ham on the swordsman. Another scene where he is just cutting through these dudes. Pretty fantastic. Cut back to Cage and his fight. His metal arm now has a sword coming out of the end.
Oh, sure doesn't. It's dope as shit.
It is dope as shit.
It is dope as fuck. I'm not sure how that happened. Like, I'm not sure if he had that set up when he put it together, or if a sword got stuck in it. It looks like it was set up to have a sword come out of it, but I'm not sure.
It does seem like he rigged up the taxi driver gun out of the sleeve thing, but with a sword out of his actual flesh.
Yeah, it's really cool. I don't know how he pulled that off with the technology you could find in Ghostland, but hey, it's dope. I'm not thinking too much about it.
Rule of cool. That's all you need.
100%. So Bernice and Susie have found like a little corner sort of to hide in on the street. And Bernice tells Susie that she's not a prisoner and she's not going to die. And then turns out Bernice is pretty handy with a sword herself, as she fends off several swordsmen who find them where they're sort of hiding out. And then Yasujiro and Hiro run into each other while there's also still a bunch of other swordsmen. They're both kind of fighting. The other swordsmen get taken out relatively quickly, and now we have Hiro versus Yasujiro. The fight goes back and forth a bit. There is a great part where they both hit each other in the nuts.
There's like a bell that chimes on each of them too.
There's a full-on cartoon like ringside bell when the nuts get hit.
I think this is when the one lady yells Gintama too, which is the Japanese slang term for balls or testicle.
There's a brief pause after the blows connect, and then Nick Cage just goes, "Fuck!" and the bell sounds again.
It's so good. This movie's so good.
It's really good.
It's really confusing, but this movie's so good.
The governor has fled back to his lair where he was partying in that earlier scene, just to see all of the women who were fawning over him at that time are just robbing the place. And they all tell him what a fucking loser he is on the way out, carrying all this shit. It's a pretty cathartic scene, I'm not gonna lie. After seeing this, he runs off crying for Susie. Back to Yasujiro and Hiro. They're having a stare down, and Yasujiro sheathes his sword. And at this point, I thought, because I kept expecting a more like clear team up from these two, because Yasujiro has no reason to like the governor. I think the events of the movie, I felt like we were being set up for a breaking point for him to turn on the governor, but that is not quite the case. We'll get into what I think is going on here in a little bit, but Yasujiro sheathes his sword and then goes for a drawing slash, which Hiro ducks and slashes with his sword arm, landing a fatal blow on Yasujiro and killing him. So, rip Yasujiro.
He was the coolest.
He was really cool.
R.I.P. to a real one.
So the governor is chasing a crawling Susie, who pulls the suit key off of his neck, and Bernice pulls a revolver and tells the governor to get the fuck away from her.
And then fires 7 shots from a 6-shooter.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the 7 shots.
Yeah, I counted.
I forgot to count.
I see a revolver. I'm like, how many shots are you going to shoot out of that gun that can hold 6 bullets?
But yes, Bernice shoots the shit out of the governor. He tries to give her a little bit of shit before this occurs, saying, I don't need you. I'll get another one just like you, just like where I got you. And then he says, listen to these ads for goods and services.
Funny how that just keeps happening.
Crazy. It's crazy. Also,
Wild.
by the way, when we pause for the ad break, now the fucking grandfather clock song is what plays in my head.
I didn't know that's what was going on.
Period of silence.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Be my time. Is that what he said? He was like, be my time or be my clock or.
Yeah. You're gonna keep time until Bernice gets back, and then they're just screaming back at each other, just fucking crazy,
like the weirdest Kesha cover.
Yep. So Bernice has just shot the governor dead. Oh, also, her last line to the governor after she shoots him dead is from all the sweet bitches.
Which I didn't catch that.
I thought was a hell of a
either.
fucking line.
That's fucking rules.
Cage arrives, retrieves the key from where Susie dropped it, and deactivates the bomb suit. Cut back to the Ghostlands. Oh, real quick, at this point, I haven't quite covered this. There's a little kid in the Ghostlands that seems sort of obsessed with Nick Cage's character each time he goes through. And this kid also followed them to Samurai Town, which is going to fly in the face of some of the metaphysics going on here when we get into the dissection. But anyway, at this point, the kid runs back all the way back to the Ghostlands. Enoch is giving another live read of Wuthering Heights, and the rat gang is just ratting it up. And the kid gets back and spreads the news that the governor is dead. The hero has won. The town goes crazy. The guys pulling the rope on the clock are told they're free from time now. They can stop pulling. They do. The clock starts up again as the people stand and watch. And when the second hand gets to 12, it fucking explodes for no other reason than it's fucking awesome. And the townsfolk just are hooting and hollering, watching the clock blow up and fall. At this point, we cut back to Samurai Town. Hero, Bernice, and Susie are sitting at what looks like a bus stop, like a little covered bench area. Susie asks if she's still alive, and Bernice says yes. They all sort of lean on each other's shoulders, and Hero comments that Samurai Town is going to be a beautiful place one day. Then Bernice, Hero, and Susie are sort of walking down the street, sharing a flask, and then the credits roll. And that was Prisoners of the Ghostland.
That's a movie, baby.
That is a fucking movie. That's a fucking film right there.
Yeah, that's not a movie. That's a film.
Yeah, that's cinema. So, thoughts?
Highly enjoyable, but kind of confusing.
I agree.
Especially
spectacle.
I like all the ball talk.
There's a lot of ball talk, and
there's a lot of ball talk.
There's a lot of like themes with balls too. Like in the beginning, the kid's kicking the ball.
Yeah.
And then they kick it at the governor. The governor's just like, "Don't mess up my white suit."
His white shoes specifically. Also, real quick, so visuals play a very, very, very large part in the storytelling in this film. The governor is in an all-white suit, white shoes, white hat, and deep red patent leather gloves, which is not an accident.
No, he's got blood on his hands.
Of course. Again, the gumballs, like the rainbow colors on the stark white background. Light is a big thing in this film. And then, of course, time. So,
yes, yeah.
I think the most obvious metaphor, message, moral when it comes to this story is time, and specifically being stuck in the past. That much I gathered on my own through my watch throughs. But again, it's not overly subtle. There's a lot of big fucking clocks. Songs
like
about
holding
clocks.
back the time, and
yeah, there's a lot of explicit references to time. Until the hero's journey is complete, time doesn't continue moving forward. So you can apply that to a number of situations where that sort of makes sense. Just an easy in this specifically, it has to do with Hero's character severely regretting his past actions. And it isn't until he comes to terms with that his life is able to move forward. He's literally a prisoner until he goes on this journey, figures out how to make peace with what he's done and move forward. And then that, results in the fulfilling of the prophecy and time moving forward again. But there is another element that I wasn't aware of until I dug a bit deeper and read a bit about what the message was intended to be in the film and certain elements of it. And what I learned was the concept within the storyline is that the people in the Ghostlands, not Bernice and not Hero, but everybody else, were actual supposedly ghosts. They died in the explosion that occurred all that time ago. That's why they can't get out. It's also why Psycho, who also died in that explosion with all the other prisoners, they fade in and out of existence. You never see them traveling explicitly. They're just there and then they're gone. And it's also why only Bernice and Hero actually make it out of Ghostland in any sort of permanent fashion. Sure, there's the Ghostland kid that followed Hero to Samurai Town at the end, but they all end right back up in the Ghostlands. They just get rid of this clock and they're tethered to that specific point in time, the haunting element or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And the guy who was doing the mannequins, I think, was like the ferryman almost.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, because he was doing it with the other geisha, and he was trying to do it with Bernice, and she was like catatonic. So she was near death. So I kind of read that as like, again, he's like the ferryman of like once you are incorporated into the mannequin, like you have died.
Well, that's the other thing about Bernice and Hero coming and going from Ghostland. Both of them were kind of near death when they get there, but they get to leave. But they only get to leave essentially when Hero has his come to ghost moment. It's not a come to Jesus moment, but it isn't until he has that
come
breakthrough.
to Heathcliff, Wuthering Heights.
come to testicle moment.
Yeah, come to testicle. It isn't until he has that moment, that realization that he's able to leave. So yeah, it was a cool movie. It was weird, interesting, told an abstract, metaphor heavy story, but it wasn't boring. It had cool fight sequences, it had practical effects, there were swords and guns. I love when you got to, if you can throw in swords and guns simultaneously, I applaud you. I love that shit.
Especially if you see some dude cut a bullet in half midair. That is my shit right there. Didn't happen in this one, but
when it does happen, it's pretty cool. Except for Wolverine.
Fucking rad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say there's a particularly egregious example of that, but that was all CGI. This is almost entirely practical effects. I didn't notice any explicit like CGI elements of.
I didn't see any.
Yeah, I didn't either. The only thing I could think of would be the nuke.
Oh yeah. Which that CGI, I'm okay with.
Yeah, that doesn't need to. You don't need to actually nuke part of Japan.
No, please,
a film. Don't do that.
But yeah, but the hand-to-hand combat, the gunfights and stuff, it looked like squibs to me. And the sword fighting was very solid, and just the gushing blood effects, of which there are several moments of, absolutely phenomenal. It's a good movie. It's a weird one. Don't watch it if you don't want your brain to hurt a little bit, or just watch it and tune out and just enjoy the action sequences and the weird scenery, because this is a visually striking film. Very interesting things just to see on the screen. You practically watch it with the sound off if you wanted to, and still be entertained. But I don't know. I liked it. Yeah. This is. I don't have a good comparison for anything else we've watched so far for this.
It's not like anything we've watched so far.
It really isn't. And we've watched a fair sampling of genres and levels of competence, but this is a little bit further off the beaten path than we've been thus far. And so I give it a lot of credit for freshness, at least so far as this podcast's journey is concerned, but also entertaining. It was a good watch.
Yeah. And also remember that practical nuclear bombs killed John Wayne. So base, do more of that. Kill
John Wayne's real name was Marion.
Hey, I'm not here to name shame, but I will shout out.
I'll name shame John Wayne.
I will shout out MDK's John Wayne was a Nazi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have too much else to say about the movie. We gave our armchair philosopher reading of what we saw on screen.
This is definitely one that I will tell the audience, like, if nothing else so far, you should watch this movie.
Yeah, I agree. It's worth your time. It's interesting and entertaining, which what else do you want from your shit?
Like, this to me, it's not on the level, but it is, I think it's close to Between Worlds.
Oh yeah.
I think it's on the level. It's hard to compare things to Between Worlds, which
it's hard to compare this to anything.
And it's hard to compare this to anything.
Right, but I think the closest thing to compare this to is Between Worlds.
Yeah.
In terms of like it being a wild auteur movie, yes. Definitely.
Yeah, they made some interesting choices on this one and in Between Worlds, but Between Worlds was at least more linear. This is heavily metaphorical in the entirety of its story and dialogue. So it's a little bit different as far as how you digest it. I would show Between Worlds to a normal person who's just going to sit there and say holy shit the whole time.
Yeah.
Whereas this, they're just gonna give that like constipated Tucker Carlson face for most of it. If you
You know what this movie kind of reminded me of, and it has kind of the stink of an Alejandro Jodorowsky film like Holy Mountain, where everything seems like it's allegory but not necessarily true.
Yeah, I get that, because again, you're piecing together the story gives you all of these pieces where it sort of makes sense. You can place what happened, where it happened, how it's happening, and the resolution.
Right.
Yeah. What you take from that as far as reconciling it with what you know about things like nuclear explosions and shit,
And totally dope sword fights.
yeah, is a little out there. Also with another thing, and I think this is a very conscious and purposeful decision. It's not really tethered to a specific place. It's a mishmash, a crosshatch of culture and locale.
It could be set anywhere where Toyota Camrys are sold,
which is fucking
pretty
everywhere.
everywhere.
But yeah, I like this one. It's funny. When it came up, I was like, this is gonna be, one of those weird like direct to DVD or unrated or limited release or whatever you want to call them. It's a mixed bag, but this one was actually well worth our time.
Yes.
And very different than anything we've watched so far. So
yeah,
hell of a break. What fresh hell is waiting for us next?
What fresh hell is waiting for us next?
To follow.
We have the movie that caused Francis Ford Coppola to say, "I will never work with my nephew again."
No, he definitely did in Cotton Club, didn't he? Eventually?
No, Cotton Club came out before this movie.
Oh, really?
Peggy Sue got married.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, Nick Cage was so fucking unhinged and like was just like the sole focus of everything in this movie that like Francis Ford Coppola was like, "I'm never working with him again."
I think the exact quote that I read was he hijacked the picture with his acting choices.
Yes, that is what he said.
And that's why Nick Cage was not Jonathan Harker in the Dracula movie that Coppola made.
Correct. But I also believe that this movie is the reason he got Raising Arizona.
Oh, I thought it was. I know I read something about Cher seeing this and being like, "That's the man I need for Moonstruck."
Yes, but I also think that it got him Raising Arizona as well.
I believe it. I haven't seen this one, so it's going to be an interesting watch.
I'm looking at like the 4 movies that he made in a row, and it's fucking Peggy Sue Got Married, Raising Arizona, Moonstruck, and Vampire's Kiss.
Jesus, that's
what
a fucking run!
What a run!
Well, let's see if this one fits in there, or if this is the odd man out.
I have heard very good things about this movie.
I have not seen this.
But
just doing a couple of quick looks at it.
I've gotten good reviews from like normies.
Jim Carrey, what are you doing here?
Yeah, Jim Carrey is in it, which I was like, what the fuck? Catherine Hicks.
Kathleen Turner. I like me a Kathleen Turner.
Yeah, this looks interesting. It looks interesting. I'm excited. Also, Coppola, you know you're gonna get a film.
Fucking John Carradine's in this? Okay. All right. Yeah, no, this looks like this is gonna be an interesting watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited for this.
Oh, just scrolling down Wikipedia, one of the blue words in the plot is Masonic Lodge, so I don't know where this is going.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna ruin any of this for myself. This is gonna be a fresh watch for fucking Helen Hunt is in this too?
Yeah, and Sofia Coppola, who I like as a filmmaker, but not as an actress.
So we get another Helen Hunt along with Kiss of Death.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Another Cage link there.
What the fuck?
Jim Carrey, though, that one's still throwing me.
Turner criticized Cage for his decision to wear false teeth and adopt a nasal fry for his character. Cage said he based it on Pokey from the Gumby Show.
I'm so ready for this fucking movie. His movie in this is Crazy Charlie.
All right, cool.
All right, well, there you go. That's I think that's enough.
I think we've gotten enough base information. Let's watch this thing.
Yeah, we have our marching orders for next time. We have successfully finished the rundown of Prisoners of the Ghostland. In the meantime, check us out on social media. You can find us on Twitter at cagefight_pod. And The Wrestler coming soon on where is it? Where do we find it, Rich?
Patreon.com/NickCageFight. We actually have to record this at some point now.
That is true. I do own a copy now.
I was saying this whole time. I was very serious. It's coming very, very soon. Very soon.
Yeah, we should get on this Patreon shit. I can't just keep throwing up free episodes.
Yeah.
I gotta give the people what they want.
Which is Ryan speedrunning G-Force.
This is true. Yes. I'll do it to me.
10 people, 10 Patreons.
You know I had to do it to me.
All right, that's going to do it for us this time. Thanks for listening. And as always, we appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Testicles!